Today we are going to be talking about mesh lights in Maya and Arnold. And mesh light is basically it replaces the geometry as a light source. Now there are few things that need to be understand when it comes to using mesh lights. Like for example, mesh light does not work with knobs. It only works with poly surfaces, and mesh light also ignores poly smoothing. So there's that to keep in mind when you're working with mesh light. And the difference between emission and mesh light is, as I said, sometimes your light source is not exactly what it's supposed to be. Sometimes your light source can be an object or something. In that scenario, you cannot use Arnold's standard light source, like for example area light or disk light. So you have to use mesh light. On the other hand, emission material consumes more sample from diffuse, and it is kind of a little bit more grainy than mesh light, and mesh light is like pretty easy to use and consumes less samples. So let's see, I have a lightsaber model here. Let me show you my scene. So this is my unrendered view, and if I play this, as you can see, it's a default Lambert material. So let me go back to my camera, and the first thing I'm gonna do is create a material for my floor. Let's take a standard surface. Let's call this floor, and I'm gonna make this diffuse and metallic. All right, let's see. It's a complete metallic object. Perfect. Now the next thing that we are going to be doing is making a new shader for the holder of the lightsaber. Let's take a new material. Let's call this saber, and I'm just gonna take the preset from the preset library. Let's take a chrome. So as you can see, it's a chrome material, and the next thing we are going to be doing is creating the light from the lightsaber, which is this part. I have a cylinder, and if you go to your Arnold tab, you'll see this mesh light over here. So let's select the mesh light, and as you select it, if I turn this on, as you can see, your object disappears, but you can see a little bit of reflection on the floor. So here are a couple of options about the mesh light. So the first thing is obviously the color. The next thing is intensity and exposure. I'm going to increase the exposure amount to 4. And as I said, mesh light is similar to light, but the mesh light only converts your geometry into a light source. So the next thing is color temperature. We are going to be using this afterwards, and here comes the main option, which is light visible. If you don't want your source to be visible, you can turn this off. If you want it to be visible, you can turn this on, and instantly your object comes back. So it's nice that they have given this option. If you just want to emit the light, and if you want to hide the main object, you can turn this off and you can hide your object. So I think that's pretty nice, and I'll increase the sample to 5. So the next thing is increasing the exposure to 6. I think we need more exposure, and let's use color temperature. Okay, so if I make this 15,000 kelvins, it will become colder, and if I make this one, it will become hotter. Now one of the best thing about the mesh light is it works really great with Arnold volume. And let me show you. If I go to my render settings and take an atmospheric volume and turn on my density to 0.1, let me turn this on, and anisotropy to 0.7 maybe, and let's change the sample to around 12. So as you can see, it creates a really nice atmospheric volume around it. So mesh lights are pretty great when it comes to, and also if you want to show original mesh, they have given this option as well. So you can pretty much turn this on, turn this off. And if you don't want to use a color temperature, or you want to manually add your own color, you can do the same. You can pretty much choose any color you want, which I think is pretty good. And since we are using volume right now, we have to increase the volume sample as well. And I think this is a really interesting thing when it comes to creating light source, because sometimes your object isn't exactly what it's supposed to be. So you can pretty much change it into a light source. And for another example, let me just put this, take this and this to a new layer. Let's hide this, and let's take some spheres. Alright, so here we are in the Arnold view, and I forgot to turn this off. So I'm going to go to my lightsaber, select my light, and the mesh light and just turn down the exposure, and let's update full scene, and there we go. So as you can see, we have a couple of spheres, and I'm going to select this one, and let's go to Arnold tab. Let's create a mesh light for this. And as you can see the light in the reflection. As I said before, make sure your light is visible. Let's change the exposure to 4. I think that's too much. Let's make it 3, and let's change the color to something like this. Let's do the same with this. So I'm going to select this, make the Arnold mesh light. Let's make it 3 as well, and I'm going to change the color to something like this. Let's do the same. Let's make it 3, and the color to be something like this, and let's make sure the sample is around reasonable amount. So as you can see, it creates a pretty interesting results, and if you don't want volume in your scene, you can also remove it, and it will still look pretty nice though. So definitely play around with different kinds of techniques and different types of shape if you want to create an interesting lamp design. Arnold mesh light I think is pretty suitable for that kind of scene. So I hope you like the video. Enjoy creating your own mesh light scenes.